Well, good evening. You're listening to the Legends Community Show. I'm your host, Greg Bell, and of course, you tuned in here to thepowervoices.com. We tune in with you every week, giving you a lot of sports, a lot of very little politics, and a little spoof stories on the wall. We'll talk about the Wimbledon and the cry fest that was Wimbledon. I've got a question for you. What's the most emotional sporting event you've ever seen? Where it just was a total breakdown. You see the wide world of sports. You see Wimbledon last week with Roger Federer getting his ninth Wimbledon championship, his 19th overall Grand Slam. And, I want to know from you guys, what do you think about Roger Federer right now? Is this guy the greatest tennis player ever? When you start thinking of great athletes, and at the same time, when you say great tennis player, we're going to have to put Serena in there because who's greater, Federer or Williams? I want to hear from you guys. Let me know who you think is the greatest. I don't care if it's a female or male. Who's the greatest tennis player to don a court in our lifetime right now? I mean, we can go back 10, 20. Go back 30 years. Go back 40 years. I don't care how far you want to go back. Think about it when you start watching the Wimbledon, and we got the U.S. Open coming up in 2 weeks. You start going and you're looking at these performances. These people are in the upper echelon of the age category. Serena's in her late 30s. Roger Federer's in his late 30s. They're all past that 33, 34 number, and they're playing like they're 17, 18. Serena won the Australian Open two months pregnant. I mean, think about what we're talking about here, and seeing Roger Federer last weekend. Is it me, or are sports celebrities getting older and better with time? Like a fine wine. Think about it. Peyton Manning won his Super Bowls at the end of his career. Tom Brady continues to win Super Bowls at the end of his career. Think about John Elway. It wasn't until John's 13th, 14th year in the league before the Denver Broncos won their Super Bowl. Is it the maturity of an athlete that leads them into that great performance? Or is it just the fact that the young kids just can't keep up with the elder? Is it the knowledge of the game? I don't know. I want to hear what you guys think about that right here on the Legends Community Show. Want to talk basketball? Okay, I got to ask anybody because I'm going to be honest. I didn't watch a lot of summer basketball, but I will say this was the most exciting and the most I've ever watched of summer NBA basketball. And I want to know, why do you think that is? Is it the Zoe effect? Or should I say the LeVar Ball effect? I mean, you're sitting here and you're watching basketball in the summer with pretty much guys you don't know who they are, but we do remember one name, and that's Lonzo Ball. And has the marketing deploy that LeVar has put together for his ZO2 and for the 3Bs, Big Ballers brand, is it such a phenomenon that we need to stop and step back and maybe give LeVar a little bit of credit here? Because not only did his son go out and do what LeVar said he was going to do, be the best player in the summer, he won the MVP of this summer league, and he made the summer league something fun to watch. And I don't know about you guys, but in the past 18 years, they've probably been doing the NBA summer basketball. How many of you guys have watched more than 10 minutes of it? I mean, I'm going to be honest. I don't watch a lot of basketball as it is. Basketball for me is one of those things when I'm sitting live in the stands, it's enjoyable. But watching it, it moves so rapidly, you miss a lot of things if you're not focused in on that television 100% of the time. But if you're an avid basketball fan and viewer, have you ever watched as much basketball as you did this summer? It's one of those summers where everything that we thought we would probably be doing, we haven't done. And I have to be honest, the heat makes it easy for me to stay in and watch a little bit more basketball than I'm normally going to be watching, because if you're anywhere in the United States, the heat has been boiling. So a lot of people have been watching for a lot of different reasons, but there has to be one thing you have to stop and say. Lonzo Ball made a difference. This kid came out of UCLA after 1 year, one and done kid. And think about it. I want to say there were over 20 19-year-olders drafted this year in the NBA draft. Is it just me, or is it's we're watching these young kids with enthusiasm. Maybe we're tired of seeing the old guard do what they do. Tired of seeing Golden State playing Cavaliers in the finals. And now we see some young bucks, some young blood come into the league and revitalize it, in essence. I think I was listening to some reports that when you talk about the revenue revitalization over the last 4 or 5 years, the NBA has gone up 240%. Where the National Football League has only gone up about 150%. But no matter how you look at it, all the majors, when I say majors, of course, I'm talking about hockey, baseball, basketball, and football in the United States. Those are our majors. But when we talk about the major sports, we don't see that young and that infusion of youth like we do with the NBA in any of the other sports. So are we just so excited to see these new faces, this new blood, this new energy, that we're selling out summer basketball leagues in Las Vegas? We're all hyped just to know what kind of shoes Lonzo Ball was wearing. And if you don't remember, guys, his last pair of shoes, he didn't play in them, but his last pair of shoes were the Jordans 31s. So we're watching this unfold in front of our face, and here's where you have to step back and say to yourself, man, maybe LeVar had a little something up his sleeve. We've complained about him all month, all week, all day, that we don't want to hear from him, but you got to give his son credit. He didn't talk. He didn't say much. He went out and performed. A couple triple doubles. He actually outstatted any rookie in the history of the NBA Summer League. His triple doubles is just one thing, but his number of assists, he was averaging about 11 assists a game, which is like 3 or 4 more than any rookie has ever done in the NBA Summer League. And on top of it, he came out and he performed, and he took this team that was a pretty average team and took them to a championship, and then they actually won the championship. And one of the things that I heard one of the reporters talk about, and it might have been Steve Alford that he was being interviewed on one of the networks, probably ESPN, but Steve Alford said, what you're seeing is the Zoe effect. When he came to UCLA, he made passing the ball something everybody wanted to do. And if you watch the enthusiasm, the first thing he did when he walked into the Summer League wasn't score 30, but make a full-length pass for a dunk. Assist. This guy shows his ability to see the entire court, something that everyone, and especially LeVar, has said from day one, why he wanted him with Magic Johnson. Magic had that same kind of vision. Are we seeing the rebirth of Showtime? That's what I want to ask most of our LA fans who are listening in here to the Legends Community Show here on the Power of Voices. Are we seeing Showtime 2 coming around? Because Magic said this is the face of our future. And I know there are a lot of haters out of there. There are haters out there saying, I don't want to listen to LeVar Ball. I don't want to hear about Lonzo. But did this young kid come out and do everything that we all expected him to do, or thought he wouldn't be capable of doing? Because he showed up and he showed out. I tell people all the time, don't be talking about it, be about it. And this is what Lonzo Ball was about over the last 2 weeks. Didn't do any talking about it, but he did about it. I guess I could say it that way. He was being about his game, and he showed that he has an NBA quality game, and he's ready to walk into the NBA. And you're going to look at Marcus Fultz. You're going to look at Fox. You're going to look at Ball. We got about 5 really outstanding 19-year-olds who are probably going to make an impact into the NBA this year. But which one of them do you think is going to make the biggest impact? That's what I want to ask most of you guys. You all tune in to me here at the Legends Community Show. Let me know. I'm your host, Greg Bell. Not only am I talking about NBA basketball, but I'm going to tell you, I don't know if it was the heat, like I said earlier, the fact that, baseball's a little on the slow side, and we're going to talk about baseball too, because we got some stars talking about the fact that baseball's a little slow as well. But Ice Cube, I got to tip my hat to Ice Cube. If I had it on right now, I'd give him one of those Derek Jeter Yankee dips, because not only were they in Las Vegas, They were around the country watching the Big Three. How many of you guys checked out Ice Cube's Big Three? I watched some of the games, man. And you know what? It's so fun to watch when you see a guy that you remember him from back in the day. And then you see guys like Gary Payton, Allen Iverson, Dr. J coaching these Big Three games as well. The funny thing that I saw is that fans were out in numbers. Ice-T came in, and maybe Lonzo Ball hurt Ice-T's Big Three, because I think a lot more people would have been watching the Big Three and going out to see the Big Three had the NBA Summer League not been as attractive and as fun as it was to watch as, like I said, the Lonzo effect. You got to give this kid a lot of courage, a lot of applause, and the Lakers are sitting back. You know, Laker fans drove to Las Vegas, the hottest place in the world right now, to enjoy watching the Lakers win a summer basketball league. Amazing, guys. Just, you know what? I sat back and I was just sitting there watching it and saying to myself, is basketball getting a resurgence right now? Because when you got, you know, Ice Cube's Big Three, you got the NBA Summer League, we just had the draft, there was so much excitement created for NBA basketball. Could this be the thing that NBA basketball needs as a resurgence? Because I tell you what, a lot of people are watching. You can tell, you know, the new deal is in place. The union has gotten the money divided, 51 to players, 49% to owners. And because of that split, you got the NFL players that are, you know, they're a little upset about these splits. I don't know if you guys heard it this past week, but Richard Sherman had a few things to say. And here's the thing about what Richard Sherman's saying to people. And if you didn't hear it, he basically said that today's era of kids have got to be willing to do what my era did, and that's go out on the picket line. We've got to be willing to strike to get the things that we want. And my only problem with Richard Sherman saying that is that, you know, Richard's been in the league 7 years now. He was a part of the new collective bargaining agreement that came in less than 7-8 years ago with the DeMaurice Smith. They used to have like 58% of the pot. And they, like, I don't know who got these players to give that 10% back, but now the players own 48% of the salary cap pot. And I have to say to myself and to these young kids, what were y'all thinking? You already have the pot in your hand, 58%. And no matter how you say it to me, I'm sorry. They do not have guaranteed contracts. They have guaranteed money, but there's a big, giant gap. And we'll talk about that when I start talking about Kirk Cousins a little bit later, because it just talks about really what you read in the paper, what the team says they're offering, and what you really are getting, because it's never what you think. When you hear he's got $100 million contract, he generally only has about 48% of what's considered guaranteed money. And that doesn't add up. When you start thinking hockey, you think baseball, you think basketball, all three of the other major sports, which have less the collisions, less the injuries, less the CTE, I can go less forever. They don't add up in terms of health costs to the NFL. And the NFL is still the only major sport that doesn't have guaranteed contracts. And it just blows my mind because, like I said, Richard Sherman said the truth. I have nothing but praise for the fact that he could stand up there and say that. But what do you say to that kid who was a free agent, who made the team for the first time this year? His salary cap number is about $485, maybe $500,000. I'm not 100% sure what the new increase in the salary cap number is for that last 53 man on roster. Remember, it's 53 men on roster, 60 that they can maintain, but the other guys are on what they call the development squad. Well, if you're that 53rd man on the roster, which is the lowest paid guy, and I think, like I said, I think just under $500,000 is the lowest salary you'll get playing in the National Football League. Can you go on strike? You know, if that was Richard Sherman, would Richard Sherman tell this young man, hey, you're going to have to strike, you're going to have to go without a paycheck? Why, you know, the billionaires and millionaires, I shouldn't call them billionaires, but why the multi-millionaire players that are in their second and third contracts that have, you know, 60, 70 million in the bank, yeah, I mean, you can tell somebody that, but can they afford it? And that's the real big argument that Richard's going to have, is that a lot of guys can't go out and go on strike. I remember my day, and it was kind of interesting because I think I was a part of one definite strike and one so. But back in 1985, we were put to the test, and we went out on strike, and it made a difference. We fought to give these guys the kind of growth that they see in their pockets today. And that was because of a group of guys that basically said, we got to strike. And we went out on strike, 1,600, 1,700 guys, and we had what we call 4 replacement games. And they were pathetic. And the owners saw that it was pathetic, and the owners' television company said, we're not going to air this. You got to get these guys back on the field. So we made them come back to the tables and do what they needed to do in the first place, negotiate fairly, and that's how we were able to eventually get them the 58%. But to give back 10% back to the owners and now start talking about going on strike for something that you should have thought about that before y'all allowed DeMaurice Smith to accept this deal is going to be hard, because once the owners took that 10% back and they have the 58%, it's going to be nearly impossible to get these owners, because these are the 32 strongest pro sports owners, I would think, in the country. Nothing against basketball, nothing against baseball. If you weren't a billionaire before you bought your basketball team, like my guy here, the guy in the Clippers' new owner, Steve Ballmer, if you weren't Steve Ballmer with billions of dollars already in your pocket, most of those owners aren't going to take going on strike very lightly, because guess what? They actually live off this money. You know, the guys like Mark Cuban, the guys like Ballmer, they don't live off of this money. This money is play money to them. But when you start talking to owners that really helped build the NBA or built the major leagues or built the NFL, they actually live from the revenues that they get from their teams. They can't afford it like the Ballmers, like the Mark Cubans. But when you see a young guy like Richard Sherman say what he's saying, I want him to stop and really just think about the ramifications of what he's trying to say that the union should do. Like I said, it's great when you got guys like Tom Brady, Richard Sherman, Peyton Manning when he was in the league. It would have been great to see those guys be at the union table, but unfortunately they're not. And I think that's one of the big differences when you start looking at the difference in the unions, why one union is stronger than the other. And I always, for my entire career in the National Football League and coming through, and now my years outside of the National Football League, the one thing I've always admitted to everyone is that the union in baseball and basketball seem to be much stronger. Now, they could be stronger because it's a lot less bodies. You're talking about 12-man rosters versus 53-man rosters. You're talking a lot less in terms of travel with the National Football League versus the Basketball League. So there's so much things that are going on that put a wear and tear on those numbers. But all of a sudden, we're starting to hear about the $400 million potential baseball player. You're hearing about the $300 million potential basketball player. And of course, Harden has a deal that puts him somewhere close. Now, all of a sudden, hearing about the $100 million football player ain't that big of an issue anymore. Ain't not a big deal. And the NFL guys are saying, wait a minute, we're putting all we're the ones at the greatest risk here. We're the ones that go head-on collision every day. This is America's pastime now, the National Football League. I mean, people are addicted to the NFL more so than the NBA or MLB or the NHL. But they're so addicted to this football, why aren't their players getting paid like the basketball players? Well, I think that becomes a simple thing. And I know that most of them don't want to hear it. They have a better union. And their union has done more for them than I will tell you point blank, more for them than they've done for us. I mean, I've got guys who can't walk, who can't do a lot of things, and their pension is peanuts compared to the average baseball player and basketball player and average hockey player who plays 1 to 2 years in the league. Upon their pension, they get $100,000 plus a year. Where in the NFL, my 9 years probably I want to say is somewhere in the $4,000 range. A giant difference, but of course I'm talking monthly money there, and if you kind of calculate that properly, they're a little over 75 or 8,000. It's almost double what a 9-year veteran in the National Football League gets. So I understand, of course, what Richard Sherman is talking about, but it's going to be hard to see Richard accomplish. And, Richard's sitting on the board, so I at least respect the fact that he's saying what he's saying, and he's putting himself out there for it as well. Now we got to go a little bit more NFL football. You're listening to the Legends Community Show here on the Power Voices. I'm your host, Greg Bell. And I don't know where I really want to start with this, because this is actually becoming a culture, and it's something that the Cowboys got to do something about. And, of course, if you haven't heard, Ezekiel Elliott involved in another late-night fight. And here's a sad thing. They got to do something. They got to do something pretty quick, because this kid is a very important piece of the puzzle for the Cowboys. And to see him continually to make this error move every time he's out. And I'm not saying this from a standpoint of an allegation like he got when he was coming out of college. He was stopped doing 100 miles in his car on an afternoon in Dallas, Texas. So he's got to go to court and try and get this case dismissed. But this last one is one of those things where I tell people, you don't have to make the mistakes to learn. I hate when I hear people always say, well, yeah, they're kids. Sometimes they're going to make mistakes. No, you don't have to make those mistakes. When you're going out and you're partying, and it's pretty obvious to me that he actually must be doing some drinking, because he's making things that drunk people would make. That's, pulling a girl's top down at a spring break so she's exposed to the world. Those kind of mistakes, those are the Ezekiel Elliott mistakes. And at some point, Jerry Jones has got to step forward. Jason Garrett has got to step forward and own up to doing some management here. If you're a corporation, you wouldn't allow your senior vice president to be out there just doing things on behalf of the company. You would have him sitting down, and he would know his responsibilities. And that's really what Ezekiel Elliott's got to do for the Cowboys. We went through this about 4 or 5 years ago when we talked about Dez Bryant. And I have to say, I like what I see in Dez Bryant now. He's out of the news, and I hate to use his name as one of the Cowboys that has stepped across the line, but it was just 4 or 5 years ago we were saying the same thing about Dez. The question is will Ezekiel Elliott listen to a guy like Dez Bryant? Will he listen to someone like Jason Garrett, who helped slow Dez Bryant down? But is he prepared to listen? Because evidently, since he's walked out of college, actually before he walked out of college, he's been a basic knucklehead. I mean, that's the basic. These are knucklehead faults or problems that there are no excuses for him. I don't care what he could say to me that this guy did. Even if the guy swung at him, Ezekiel Elliott has to know and be smart enough to know that he's a target for civil suits. People just want to get rich listening or doing for him or coming at him just to take him into court and try and get some of his money. That's just it's a knucklehead it calls. So Ezekiel's got to be able to man up now and decide what he wants to do with his life, because this is almost as bad as, Le'Veon Bell. I should say it like that, but it's almost as bad as him not wanting to give up a little marijuana to make the millions. Ezekiel has a great and bright future ahead of him, and the Cowboys need him to win a championship. He is that key element to the three Bs, or the killer bees, or whatever they call them in Pittsburgh, the killer bees. Well, you got Dak, Elliott, and you got Dez. I don't know what their initials are going to be, but you need those three. And I think the Cowboys have put a lot of emphasis into making sure those are their three who are going to touch the ball. And when one of them starts to mess up like Ezekiel is messing up, you got to say to yourself, who is going to be the person who sits down with him and discusses, hey, Ezek, how are you going to help? How are you going to help this team and not take away from this team? Those are all the things that somebody has to do. And at some point, you have to think it's going to be Jason Garrett or it's going to have to be the head man, Jerry Jones. I don't know, but I definitely, I'm from one of those undisclosed locations today back in Columbus. So, of course, back here in Columbus, Ohio, it's buzzing about what is Ezekiel thinking, what is Ezekiel doing, when is he going to man up and basically mature up. Because these are just immature mistakes that he continues to make, and he doesn't seem to care that he's making them. I don't know. You tell me. You're listening to the Legends Community Show here on the Power of Voices. I'm your host, Greg Bell. And before I run off of football, we got a lot of football to talk about. Of course, you got Le'Veon Bell, Kirk Cousins, and of course, if you're a Ram fan, you got Trumaine Johnson. All have done something that, going into this year, no one really put a lot of emphasis in the fact that they were franchise tags. Of course, Kirk Cousins and Trumaine Johnson, this is their second year as a franchise tag. But I'm going to tell you what, based on what I'm reading, hearing, and seeing, what's wrong with the franchise tag? You tell me. Because Le'Veon Bell is going to make a little over $12.1 million, I believe it is. Shady McCoy's at 8, and he's the highest paid running back in the league. Kirk Cousins is going to make $23.9 million this year. And if you compare that to what he made last year, this guy will have made over $40 million guaranteed. That's the special thing that I love about it. Once they sign that deal, it's guaranteed for that year. So Kirk Cousins in 2 years has made over $40 million. And had he signed a long-term deal, his guaranteed number was going to only be about $40 million. So what's the difference? People were complaining about this when it first came out, that they didn't want to be franchised or tagged transitional. But now we're starting to hear more and see more players taking control of their future. Now, is it a guaranteed contract? No, by any means. It's a 1-year contract that's guaranteed. But when you're a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, who was drafted, I want to say Kirk was drafted in the 5th round. Of course, if you remember the draft 5 years ago, they picked the RG3 with their number 1 pick, and they thought the future lied in RG3, but it was down around the 5th round in Kirk Cousins that the future in the franchise is falling into his hands. Kirk Cousins, bless his soul, hasn't said much. But, of course, Bruce Allen, and, I've got a little history with Bruce, so I know Bruce fairly somewhat well. Bruce comes out and he, in essence, tells the world that they're not happy with Kirk Cousins. You would think if you put a franchise tag on a player and the player accepts your franchise tag, that's where the story would end. But I guess Cousins didn't even make a counter offer to any of the Redskins' offers. And so Bruce Allen tweets, and I'm going to tell you guys, I don't care how much I talk about this or say, I'm not 100% behind the Twitter world. Tweeting everything like Donald Trump and now Bruce Allen, I'm not going to tell you that's the way you need to break the news to the world. Whatever happened to leave it behind doors or keep it behind closed doors, all those little sayings. But Bruce Allen comes public and says that Kirk Cousins' agent never responded to any of their offers. And so it's almost a given now the two sides will not meet again. They definitely cannot franchise him a 3rd year because it'd be something like a 20% increase to this, which put him somewhere around $34 million or something like some crazy number. But if you're a Le'Veon Bell, you're now the highest paid running back in the league in essence. I don't care what the guaranteed money is. The fact of the matter is, in the NFL, if you don't play and they cut you, your contract ends that day. You could have 3 years, 4 years left on the contract, and outside of that signing bonus, or as they call it, guaranteed money, it doesn't matter. It's not like baseball, football, and hockey. It does not matter. Excuse me, I said football, but basketball, I should have said. So all of a sudden, you have 3 prominent players signing franchise tags and taking the one-year deal. And What did Trumaine Johnson make last year? Something like 11 or 12 million dollars. This year, Trumaine's going to make 16.74 million dollars. What's the problem with that? My only problem is they're still waiting on Aaron Donald, and why Aaron Donald hasn't signed yet, I'm a little shocked because the Rams definitely need him, and they definitely need Alec Ogletree, not to mention LaMarcus Joyner. The Rams have to get some guys signed. I don't know if they got enough room in their cap to get all the guys where they want them, but let's pray they do if you're a Ram fan out there. But congratulations to Trumaine Johnson, of course, Le'Veon Bell, and as well Kirk Cousins, because all three of these guys have used the systems that the owners put in place. And I can tell you right now, the owners are definitely going to stop, backtrack, and say, we need to do something about this franchise tag and about this transitional tag, because this wasn't the way we planned to see it happen. And it's kind of crazy because if you're Kirk Cousins, you go out and you play. And say Kirk Cousins, I think his numbers are 17, over the last 3 years, he's like 17, 14, and 1 in terms of touchdowns to interceptions. To wins, I should say. He throws a little bit more interceptions, but he's throwing for over 4,500 yards each season. He comes in. They've taken weapons away from him all the times. The receiving core has been diminished from where he started 3 years ago, but he continues to put up the numbers. He works with what he has. Now, if Kirk Cousins goes out and has the kind of year that a $23 million man is supposed to have, my question goes, will they sign a long-term then? Or is Kirk Cousins just basically trying to leave the Washington Redskins? You hear him say, I want to play for the Redskins and finish my career with the Redskins, but the actions don't really show the same thing because there's no negotiations. To hear that there had been no negotiation blew my mind because I thought that at least there would have been some communication. But the way Bruce Allen has put it out there, no communication is basically what he's gotten from Kirk Cousins' attorney. And, I have to say this, an attorney doesn't do anything that the player doesn't ask him to do or that the player doesn't know. So Kurt had to have known his attorney wasn't going to respond, and that had to be in the back of each of that. That was part of his negotiation deploy. And evidently it worked out well for him. I think Le'Veon Bell's was somewhat similar. I think Trumaine Johnson was trying to get a long-term deal. But I think the more and more you see that second-year franchise tag, you get that 10% added to your previous year, and all of a sudden, guys, that money starts to look pretty darn good just to sign the one-year deal, knowing that if you go out and have another great year, the deal you're going to get after this is going to blow everybody away because they can't put another franchise tag on you. There's no way they can go a third year with Trumaine Johnson and Kirk Cousins because both of those guys will be over $20 million and possibly $30 million on Cousins. And that will be an insane number considering the best quarterback in the league is somewhere close to around 20 or 19. And that, of course, is Tom Brady. So much things to think about, guys. Football is getting close. And I hope my football fans are getting excited. They're getting geared up. We're 10 days from, I believe, or 9 days from the first team reporting to training camp. And, the Rams will be reporting to training camp right around, I want to say, July 28th, 29th. So we're getting geared up here in Southern California, getting geared up in the National Football League for training camp. And I tell you what, it's going to be another exciting year. Hopefully we'll have another exciting run to the Super Bowl as we did last year. And for you LA fans, here's your one-stop shop. Join me here as football season comes around. We'll get the guys back on the wire, talk to some Chargers this year. We're going to get some guys from the Chargers online, get some more guys from the Rams, talk about the season that will be 2017, and see if we can get a winning ball club here in Los Angeles. Of course, if you haven't been following the news, both the Chargers and the Rams are back in L.A. Of course, the Chargers used to be back, the L.A. Chargers back in the 30s and 40s, back when the game first started. They were one of the official AFL teams to come over, and they were the L.A. Chargers. Of course, the Rams came from Cleveland, being the Cleveland Rams, moved to Los Angeles, played in the Coliseum. They both played in the Coliseum, and they will both be playing in Inglewood. But until that time, 2 years from now, we'll be watching the Chargers at that, I don't know if they call it the Home Depot Center. I've been calling it that my entire life since it was built. But it's on the Compton Dominguez campus. And, of course, the Rams, again, will be down at the Los Angeles Coliseum, the home of the USC Trojans, which makes it so difficult for me to walk in there periodically. But I do muster up the energy, and I will go in and cheer for my Los Angeles Rams. Football season coming, and there's one guy who's still waiting to be enrolled into the or employed by the National Football League. And I got to ask everybody, before we go too much further, did you see Michael Vick earlier this week on Fox Sports? My goodness. Michael Vick, of all people, I couldn't believe it when I heard what the topic was going to be, but they had Michael Vick on to comment about Colin Kaepernick. Guys, you're listening to the Legends Community Show here on the Power of Voices. I'm your host, Greg Bell, and all I can say is damn. Damn, damn, damn. Michael Vick, did you really get on national television and talk about repairing images, and the first thing that come out of your mouth is that Colin Kaepernick needs to clean up his afro? This is where I have to ask, guys, shouldn't he? Isn't this the kind of person that you should kind of give him the questions in advance and ask him what he's going to say beforehand? I mean, he gets on there, and I'm just like disappointed. I'm gone on this one. I wanted to hear something intelligent come out of Michael Vick's mouth. I really did. But as soon as he said that he needs to cut his hair and clean up, I was like, what does that have to do with anything? It was just a bad response to a very dynamic question. Because the point of the matter is, Colin Kaepernick didn't do anything wrong. His image was tarnished because he chose to use his constitutional right. He didn't murder anybody. He didn't rape anyone. He didn't slander anyone. But the public has turned him into a villain. Michael Vick was a dog fighter. He went to jail for his crimes. He comes out and he had somebody ready to open arm help him. I mean, he came back into the NFL. And yeah, you had your naysayers, but here's where it's getting to be a little touchy-touchy. Colin Kaepernick lived by what he said he was going to do. And I can't take away from a man who's willing to stand up in front of the public and say, I am. There's so many naysayers in this world. It's great to see someone take the platform that he did and live by what he said he was going to live. Now, in terms of his not voting, yeah, you can make calls to say he was half foot in, half foot out. But Colin Kaepernick put his money where his mouth is. He took his actions where his mouth was. And to hear Michael Vick, someone who really, if you want to talk about was a tarnished image, he not only did he tarnish his image, even when they tried to give him an out, he still lied about it. But Colin Kaepernick, all he did was exercise his constitutional right. And we've turned him into truly the Riddler, the true villain in the Marvel comics. This guy will probably, at this rate, never get an opportunity to show his talents again, and that'll be a shame. And someone else is going to do what he did, and they basically are going to applaud that person for standing up for their rights. And why Colin Kaepernick is being the GOAT on this one, why we're going to slaughter him, I can't tell you. I had no problem with what he did. I've seen worse. I've seen people burn the flag. I've seen people walk away from our country. I've seen them bash our country. All he did was say, we've got to do something as a country to stand up for those people less fortunate. And that's really what Colin Kaepernick's whole kneeling was about. It wasn't about he didn't respect the army, the armed forces. He didn't respect the flag, or he didn't respect the United States. He just said it's hard for him to to honor something when there's so many oppressed people around him. And that was his whole message. I just think it didn't come the way he wanted it to. And it didn't go out the way he wanted it to. But long and short of it is, now he's still unemployed, and he should be employed. He's better than, I would say, 50% of the quarterbacks that have contracts in the National Football Leagues. And we're going to hear hundreds of different excuses of why he's not playing. But in the long and short of it is, he's not playing because he decided to execute his constitutional right. He took a knee, and that's his number one reason. And in the long and short of it, does his color have something to do with it? Yes. Does his actions have something to do with it? Yes. Does the fact that the money who put the NFL on television and the fact that fans are upset at him, does that have something to do with it? And it's still the same answer, yes. So unfortunately, Colin, I wish you all the best. I'm sure you'll get your day and maybe it's something else. But right now, the NFL has pretty much spoken that they're not looking to have you in an NFL uniform in this upcoming season. And I'll be damned to hear Michael Vick go on television and tell you need to cut your hair. One of the dumbest statements I think I've heard in a long time. Should never have come out of his mouth. He should have talked about something realistically. Like how does he improve his image? I don't know if his image can be improved unless people are willing to forgive the fact that what he was trying to say, they didn't understand. And that's something that's going to be hard because you have to be able to, obviously say to yourself, well, I just didn't understand what the guy was saying, and I didn't like his actions. But had they took the time to really follow what he was trying to say or do, I don't know. Maybe Colin Kaepernick, 20 years from now, like, the day that we buried Muhammad Ali, will be, remembered for something that he did that truly made a difference to most people, if not to all people. So, unfortunately, Colin, I can't help you this year get into the league, but I'm sure going to continue to tell people you deserve a spot in the National Football League, and hopefully eventually one of these 32 billionaires will say, hey, you know what? I need to win some games, and this is the young man that can do it for me. You're listening to the Legends Community Show here on the powerofvoices.com. Tune in all week long and listen to some of the great shows we've got here on the Power of Voices. Now, I did have one other thing that I wanted to talk about in NBA. And that was, of course, the whole fiasco around the Big Baller brand. Now, when we came on today, we talked about the fact that summer basketball is this was the most exciting summer for all the years of summer basketball in the NBA. This was the best year. And part of it is the fact that we had so many young talents. But the largest part of it is the fact that we focused so much on this young man, Lonzo Ball. We categorized every time he laced up his shoes, whether he was wearing Stephen Curry shoes, Harden shoes, Kobe shoes, his own shoes, or Air Jordan. And I loved the fact that Lonzo eventually came to the mic and basically said he's looking for a bidder. And I can see now today Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, the $100 million term that his father talked about 2 months ago, don't sound that crazy no more, does it? And it's a starting point. Now, whether they give him $100 million or give him more, I don't know. But the beautiful thing that I think I'm noticing is it's amazing how sellout crowds can make shoe companies go, he's doing this. And quality basketball player on the court, and now the MVP of the summer, don't be surprised. And I'm telling you, I will be the last person to go, I told you so. But don't be surprised if next week we don't hear that Lonzo Ball and Nike or Under Armour, whoever that shoe company is, don't be surprised if they didn't just sign a $100 million deal to the first rookie point guard to the Lakers, and this is the largest shoe deal in history for a rookie coming out of college. Now, don't take it back and think about Michael Jordan, because when Michael Jordan came out, he wasn't signing a $10 million deal. He wasn't even probably around $3 million for his deal. Sonny Vaccaro signed him out of North Carolina to wear Air Jordans, And remember, it was just Nikes. They were Nike Chicago style, Chicago color high tops. They became the Air Jordans 1, but the original Nikes were just Nike shoes. Nothing special. Didn't have his name on it. They were just a shoe Michael Jordan was wearing. But now all of a sudden we got ZO2s. You got to think he's going to use the name Zoe, so his shoes are going to be Zoe something. Just Zoe. I don't know what they're going to say, but you got to think Under Armour, Adidas, Nike, and I can't even think of who would be another shoe company, because Reebok pretty much is Adidas. His own shoe, the Big Baller brand, it's going to be interesting because if he signs a shoe deal with someone else, what does the LeVar do with the shoes that have been ordered? I think he said something like, 600 shoes got ordered. A couple NFL guys and NBA guys actually ordered the shoes online. So what are they going to receive? Are they going to actually receive the ZO2s? I mean, I want to know. These are things LeVar is going to eventually have to be back on television talking about pretty soon. And he's going to be talking about the fact that, this was a marketing deploy. And it was a hell of a deploy because all of a sudden, the $100 million is the number that we're talking about. And he said his son was worth $100 million on a shoe deal. We all laughed about it. LeBron tweeted about it. I don't think I saw anything from Jordan. But you saw so many of these other players say, what a crazy deal. He'll never get it. It's crazy. The girl tweeted that she wanted to see him blow out a pair of shoes. Everything has been tweeted about Lonzo that you can tweet. Really, I think most of it's been tweeted about LeVar, but Lonzo's name has been tagged to so many tweets about his shoe deal and what's going to happen. How many people are hating now? How many fathers are going to start getting in front of the television boasting their kids' future like LeVar has done? Because I'm going to tell you, if you want to talk about a great marketing scheme, he's showing that sometimes bad press is even good press. And this guy's father has gotten more bad while Zoe continues to do what he does, which is just play basketball, be a quality teammate. But now all of a sudden, all the shoe companies are huddling around the decision. And I got to think within the next 10 days, we're going to hear something from one of the major shoe companies. One of them are going to step up and say, we're going to give this young kid the money. It's one of those things you got to expect at this stage of the game, because if you weren't in Las Vegas, you didn't get the shock effect. Everybody I know who went out to Vegas to see it, they said, Greg, it was like walking into a Laker playoff game. This guy brought so much hysteria, so much excitement to summer basketball. And I hate to put it all on Lonzo Ball, but his dad said that was going to happen. He said it was going to be crazy. He's going to create excitement. He's going to bring fans in. He's going to create and get the team to start winning. And I hate to be a hater and say, he told you so, but haters, LeVar told you so. He said that his kid had that kind of it power. And he's demonstrated the quality tools that he has on the court. The one thing he said is his son can see the court. And if you didn't watch any summer league games, guys, you didn't see a kid who wasn't ready for the NBA. He had an NBA game, and he saw the entire court. And I mean, from the point of the first tip-off, he saw the entire court. So no matter what you want to say about this kid's play, no matter what you want to say about his father at this point in the game, right now, bad media for LeVar is good media for Lonzo. And it's just going to keep coming, guys, because if the Lakers get off to a great start, that's all you're going to hear all spring, fall, winter. It's going to be talking about Zoe. And it's almost hard to say that because, Zoe, Miami Zoe has always been there, and I played during that era. So it's going to be interesting to watch the new Zoe take over the NBA. You're listening to the Legends Community Show here on thepowerofvoices.com. Of course, we come to you every week. My name is Greg Bell. If you don't know my history, Google it. I guess that's what I can say to make it quick on everybody. Wanted to touch back before we left for the day, talk about the NBA signings, talk about the changes. Guys, man, we didn't jump into the Harden's contract as hard as I'd like to, but man, what do you think about Houston? Did they put themselves into the number 2 spot in the West? So many people are talking about what's going on in New York, and I'm gonna be honest, guys. I'm not gonna dive into New York as like every other station because I have no clue. You know, you fire a guy, you hire a guy like Phil Jackson to come in and change your organization, change the mindset, and you see the fiasco that became Phil versus Carmelo. And now we're hearing Carmelo is a number 1 look for Cleveland. You know, he'll agree to a sign and trade with Cleveland or Houston. And I have to tell you, Houston has done some homework over the offseason, getting Chris Paul to partner up with Harden. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, what is going on with Cleveland right now? Because I'll be honest, you know, Cleveland is sitting here, and I want to see Cleveland Cavaliers continue to prosper, but I haven't seen them do anything just yet, you know, other than let their quality GM go midway through the season. I mean, Cavalier fans, let's face it, the NBA right now is Cavaliers versus Golden State. Golden State they don't have to do anything other than sign their veterans, and they're going to be number 1 seed as usual, probably another 68, 70 win season, whatever. It's going to be the Cavs and Golden State, but you know, you got the Celtics who went out and did their thing. They signed some quality free agents. I mean, I watched San Antonio's get Guy. I mean, Rudy Gay. I'm like, oh my goodness, we got some quality free agents out there, and Cleveland's not even attempting to sign any of them. And the Lakers aren't making any moves just yet. I can see something happening with these young guys being moved, maybe 1 or 2 of these young guys being moved for quality veterans. But now, you know, Paul George, he's in OKC, and I saw the sit-down interview with him. I'm not sure the Lakers are going to get the kind of fire, you know, that kind of veteran power they need going into the season right now, especially when you got so much high hopes with Lonzo playing the way he did this summer. So right now, if you're an NBA fan and you're looking for parity, don't expect it. I don't see any parity in that game right now. It's just the opposite of football, where even a losing team has a capability of putting themselves back into a Super Bowl run. I don't see but a 2-man team right now going to the finals again, and it's Cleveland versus Golden State. But you got to tip your hat to the San Antonio Spurs because, man, picking up Rudy Gay to go with everything else that they have in place there and the best coach in the league, and now you give him some tools. I see San Antonio filling that 2nd seed, but I see Houston making a run now. And I mean, man, Houston looks so strong right now. And you're looking at the Cavs. Of course, they're strong, but would the Cavs be better? And this is a question I want you to think about it. Would the Cavs be better with Carmelo Anthony? And I have to tell you, that's a question that, you know, I need to get a basketball aficionado on the program, and maybe that's what we'll do next week. How important would signing a Carmelo Anthony and maybe unloading a Kevin Love, how important would that be for Cleveland? Would it give them the star power or the shooting power to take on a Golden State Warrior team? I mean, you tell me. I don't have an answer today, but it's something that makes you go, You know, because Carmelo has pointed to the 2 teams he's willing to agree to the trade. And with everything happening in New York, I got to think the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to trade Carmelo Anthony. So by trading Carmelo Anthony, would a Cleveland Cavalier team have the firepower to go up against Golden State? I mean, if I'm thinking about it and writing myself notes and trying to analyze the 2 teams, my answer right now is no. It'll keep them number 1 seed in the East, but I still don't see the firepower there that's going to get them by the Golden State Warriors. And then when you look over at the San Antonio Spurs, who right now have put themselves in a pretty solid number 2 seed in the West, they're still not athletic enough, even though they've got Rudy Gay going over there and they've enhanced their team over the last 2 years. They're still a big low post team. They got to try and still get the ball down low to the postman. Most of their great veterans are still up in age, so I just don't know if they're going to have the firepower to take on Golden State. And so it's almost inevitable that we're going to see Golden State and Cleveland in the finals again in 2018. But what do you think about Carmelo to the Cleveland Cavaliers? I don't know, but if I'm a betting man, I think all the chips still fly to Golden State. And even with Carmelo, with LeBron James, that's going to still probably be a quick sweep, not necessarily as fast as last year, but maybe as quick. Before I get out of here, I wanted to talk about what I mentioned earlier on, Roger Federer. What do you say to this guy? Is he the greatest male tennis player? Because I think when we start to finalize things, guys, people are going to give Serena the credit she's due. She might be the greatest tennis player ever. And mind you, we're not comparing apples to apples here, so I don't want to hear the naysayers blow me up or send me little tweets or anything saying, hey, Federer will destroy Venus Williams. I don't know if he would destroy her, but I think he probably might beat her just off physical tools. But the thing about it is, let's compare apples to apple. Nobody has had the career that Serena has had in terms of her Grand Slams wins and the dominance she's had on her sport. I don't think there's anyone that's had that kind of dominance except for Usain Bolt. So when you start thinking about greatest athletes, you got you got to think about really how they transcend the sport itself. I mean, when you start thinking about greatest basketball players, that's why I put Michael Jordan number one. Not because he had these unbelievable gifts or things of those nature. I'm looking at how he transcended the game. And I don't think there's any player that's taken a team 6 times in the NBA Finals and won all 6. I mean, the object of being in basketball is to be the best. And the best wear the world championship rings. So you got to give Jordan credit where credit must be given. And he's taken his team to the glory land 6 times, and those are the only 6 times he ever was in the finals. So people compare LeBron to Jordan. That's the one thing that you're going to have to be honest about and say to the fact that, yes, LeBron has taken teams to more NBA finals, but the fact that he's lost those finals doesn't stack up to Michael Jordan's. But of course, back to Roger Federer. My hat goes off to the guy. If I had it on, I'd be tipping it every time when you see a guy like him play the way he's been playing. He gets his 19th Grand Slam. The question is can he get 20 or 21 by the time he decides to retire? And it's going to be interesting to see him and Nadal will be playing in the U.S. Open in 2 weeks in Flushing Meadow in New York. So keep your eyes tuned on Roger Federer. Can't say anything but great things about him. What a great champion. No off the field, off the court issues. He's been a great ambassador for men's tennis and for tennis game as a whole. Guys, I've got to get out of here today, but before I go, just want to remind you, tune in every Tuesday, Thursday here on thepowervoices.com. This is the Legends Community Show. I'm your host, Greg Bell, and I will talk to you later.